I guess we could get started. Uh, I don't have that as much to share this week. I did make a little progress in the topic modeling, um, and was able to show a little bit of trending topics. So because the BERT topic is dependent on HDB scan, it has the outliers, the -1, and of course it's huge. It's like a third of the data I'm giving it. So it's like there's like out of 5,000, there's, I don't know, depends on how you do it, but like 2,000 outliers. And so I tried to remedy that by looking at those outliers and finding their highest probability and sticking them back in the clusters. But, which means you have to set a threshold, like I look at the
Right.
probability for each document that it's in one of the topics that were defined by the topic mapping. And so I look at it and I'm like, well, if I go at 0.3, it's almost acceptable, but that only gets me a couple hundred. Like I diagrammed the whole thing. Let me see if I have it here real quick. I'll share it if I do that diagram. Yes, I do. Okay, so let me share my screen real quick. Almost there. Okay, you see that?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so you could see, it's not an unusual curve, right, for a relevant. I mean, it's maybe upside down the way you normally look at it, but
Right.
number of documents on the bottom, and you could see where the bend is, right? But anyway, so I'm like, I can't really bring the outliers back in very easily. So I mean, very well. I can only do a little bit, and so then I started looking over at I think it's really a fundamental thing with topic modeling. So, what do you can't really say anything like concrete, like how much of your collection is being covered by a particular topic because of these outliers, right? And when I look at the outliers, I see that a bunch of those really do belong in the topics. I could tell just by the titles of the documents. So, it's a problem in that sense. And so I went back to Gensum and did LDA instead. And I go, well, okay, just to see all documents, they don't have outliers, all documents, it's really the same. Yeah, they have a home, but it's really the same thing. I mean, it's still, you can get a probability distribution for every document, for every topic. And if you set your threshold like in a better place, you're still going to have outliers. So then I just realized, the outlier thing it's a fundamental problem with topic modeling. And that's why topic modeling is good for exploration. And it's good for maybe identifying, new topics and just giving you a very rough sense, because even though it's missing those outliers, I can tell it's still really covering the areas. And then what I did is I topic modeled the outliers. And that was kind of interesting. So you can do this sort of recursive topic modeling.
Right.
And so like there's one area that's just all financial content, which is not really our industry, but maybe I could, topic model that as well. And, and see how it breaks down. So it's good for data exploration like that. So this is what it looks like, when you do the topic modeling and visualize it. I showed this before, right?
Yeah, I see that.
Okay. So I guess I struggled and learned with outliers. I actually couldn't get good LDA results from Gensum. I just don't have the time to make it work, I think. But because I know it should work well with Gensum, with the LDA. And there's also another NMF or something.
NMF,
I think.
Non-negative matrix factorization. Yeah. Okay.
There's a really exactly, all about it. So, and I wasn't aware of that, and I would like to try that. The reason I came across that was because I re-listened to a topic modeling. There's a podcast interview that Sam does from 2019 on topic modeling, and it's really interesting. I mean, he pushes them with a lot of details, and so anyway, I think that's pretty much what I what I have to say about that, what I've done this past week in terms of the topic modeling stuff. Anyway, I know one thing. Plotly has this thing called tree browse.
Okay.
Let me see, is that what it is? Yeah, let me go to it. Tree map. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't seen it.
So another way to do, right. So another way to do.
Oh, is it like boxes, right? Okay,
yes,
I think I know what it is.
You know
Okay.
exactly what it is, of course. Yeah. So I'll show it to you. But the point is, we're now this same content that I'm exploring with topic modeling. Well, it's currently it's in the process of being classified by our outsourcing company. So within a couple of weeks, we'll have more of that back. And then I'm like, well, how do you sort of use a hierarchical taxonomy of class? You've got classifications, and it's, how do I show sort of a topic modeling kind of view of that, so you could see what topic covers what areas. I mean, how many? So this is what I researched a bit, and this is a good example right there.
Yep.
So that looks familiar, right?
Yep.
So this to me seems like a great way to explore an already classified set of content. And this, it's interesting here because the way they're implementing is with a data frame. Okay, so basically, I'll see if they show it up here better. I have a collab where I show it a little more clearly, but the point is, basically you have a data frame, okay, and you feed it columns from the data frame: world, continent, country, right?
Okay.
And then value is population, and then you pull that in right here: world, content, country, population.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And so you can actually have a value at the end too, which of course for us is documents, but it could be document count, I guess. So I came across that. I'm hoping to implement that with the content that I'm trying to explore. So it's a form of topic mapping, but it's not really topic mapping, but it's exploring the same space in a similar way.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I mean, my only concern about it is that I have a taxonomy that doesn't, basically each column has to match a level for this to work. And my taxonomy is not like, it's 3 deep everywhere, right? It could be 3 deep here, it could be 8 deep there, 12. So I'm going to end up with like 20 columns, and they're going to be really sparsely populated. And I don't know if that's going to work with it.
Can you? Sorry, I kind of missed. Why is this good for the clusters?
So what I'm thinking about this for is for content that has already been classified through a taxonomy. Okay. So you have you're not really doing a topic modeling. You don't have to figure out what the topics are, but you already have them. And so you create your taxonomy. I have a taxonomy, right? And so what I do is I create a taxonomy. That's what this is. This is a taxonomy, a geographic taxonomy. World to region to country. But in my case, it would be like, it would be like big data, and then, big data languages or techniques, and then map reduce, and this would be, whatever, tools or whatever. And so you can browse.
So size is proportional to
yes.
How much? Okay.
I mean, that's the main thing here, right? You really get a real sense of size, depending on what you're using for size.
So size proportional to like the number of examples of the data you have, or?
Yeah. So you can set size to anything with this tool, like weight. In this case, it's population. But what I would put it as would be maybe number of documents. But then, of course, ideally, I would put it as activity on our site of how much activity each one of those documents is getting. So like our marketing folks could look at this and say, wow, this topic is getting a ton of activity over the last, maybe I'll just restrict it to the last month.
What is it?
You could also do the color, right? For the activity. If this color bar on the right, there is a color attribute here, the life expectancy. So you could use that for activity.
Yes. exactly right. See, you know, it's a great little diagram. I think it's a great little tool for exploring data in this way when you have a taxonomy or a hierarchy of data. I agree, because you got size and then you have the chart on the thing on the right side.
What would you use what would be a second parameter that you use? If you use one for size, what would you use for color?
You mean for this thing on the right?
Yeah, like so you can vary. You can use one parameter, one variable for size. But in case of taxonomy or in case of document specification, what would be your what's your second important parameter? Like that's have you thought about it?
I haven't thought about it. And CG, you just mentioned activity, but I think actually, like looking at this, what you'd want, and that would be a little, yeah. I mean, in a way, it's like a heat map. If you do the right side activity, right, and the activity is over the last week or month, so you may be showing like the size of the content as the size, so our coverage, right? And then you do like a heat map where red is like, so this one's really hot now, I guess, something like that. Or you could have, yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that. I haven't gotten that far. I mean, you could have activity for the size, and then you could have like, how if it's increasing, right, over the last 3, so the rate of change increase. That would be perfect, because you go, wow, we've got a lot of activity in this one, but it's decreasing. That'd be like, a blue color, right? I don't know how you do it. And then red is like hot. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm asking because I'm thinking of like reusing this idea.
Yeah, well, tell me how you use it off the top of your head.
So one would be exactly, the tree structure, or like approximate tree structure, because our tree structure is crazy big. But then I can use the maybe number of nodes below as a size. And then the color I would use as like how much data we're actually getting. So we would use because we have like a very we can have very rich tree structure graph, but we're not getting a lot of data out of it. Like it's not we have a graph structures because somebody source really, like we have like very detailed data, but the volume might be very low.
By the way, I have the same thing. It's simpler. It's just documents, classified topics, and a hierarchical taxonomy. But I think out of the 5,000, there may be even 1,000 that are hardly ever used. So. So. Okay.
It's interesting that TWIML is one of our favorite visualization tools.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to find.
What's it called? Oh, a tree map.
Tree map, yeah.
Oh, generally, you guys use tree maps. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen them before, but I couldn't quite dig it out of the back of my head. I'm like, I know there's something like this out there. They have ones that are like lens-like, where they're like different shapes and things too. But anyway. I mean, obviously what would be interesting in your field, Yuri, to some extent, would be to subset your data to a particular part, like a particular crop, maybe, right? And you could even show those crops by regions like this, maybe, by how well they're doing, or predicted, how well they're predicted to do, or maybe sub-segments or something. I just think it could be really cogent when it's focused within a particular subdomain of the agricultural world or data. for your customers more. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to, once I find visualization, I'll show you.
Okay, I think that's all I have of interest to share. A lot of production stuff going on now. So, one other teeny thing. One other teeny thing is I finally trying 6 months to engage the Google support guys in machine learning, and so they're finally. I finally had a meeting with them. I think I might attend a little bit of Google I/O next week, if there's like a session or two, maybe. That's happening next week because they recommended it. But basically, I haven't had time to explore Google's NLP capabilities. And so they're sort of like leading me into that. So hopefully over the next couple months or so, I'll start learning more about Google's NLP platform and capabilities. I don't know. You guys don't use GCP, do you?
I don't.
No, I don't think Yuri, you do. Yuri, what cloud are you guys into mostly? Or CG?
Sorry, yeah. So we use AWS for production. But actually now, so we actually have like internal debate. So we, because for compute, for production, we use CPUs, and infrastructure team doesn't want to protect. They're not a big fan of supporting GPUs, just because our GPU tasks are either like research tasks or like one-off tasks. So we create like custom nodes, but we're actually looking at Datadog right now. So we might actually start using Datadog as our like environment for, like easily like create, use the AWS in the back. But in theory, we want to become sort of independent, so we can use other platforms, but right now it's AWS. I think our structure supports actually GCP, but in practice we don't use it.
Oh, I don't understand the point about GPUs. So you're saying in production serving of models, you guys don't like?
We don't use in our like deployment. We deploy on CPUs. So somebody just created first production model that was supposed to use GPUs, and it was difficult because we want to be able to dynamically create node, deploy, and like run inference. But with our software, so basically they didn't want to have like a GPU node as part of like regular deployment. So for now, but they checked and they said CPU should be good enough for deployment, so that's what they're doing.
So I wasn't aware there's issues with deployment with GPUs. That seems unusual.
Oh no, but like no, the problem is our so we have our own images, and they work. We know with our software, we know they work on CPUs, and if we have to do it with GPUs, they have to like make sure with every delivery everything works. You need to have like infrastructure, right? So you need to have like a CUDA, then you need to have the right library on top. So just infrastructure didn't want to deal with it for one task, but maybe like eventually we'll do it.
So we also use, in most cases, apart from a few cases now, we use most of our inferences on on CPU, but some of them recently have been moving to GPU. But our main thing was cost, and we didn't want to pay for the capacity unless absolutely needed.
Yep.
All right, I can quickly show like the picture. All right, can you see it?
Yes.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah, so we have our own displays because kind of displays the way to browse the data. So we have like multiple, and we actually those are like a sort of web displays, but we now have also dash displays. But this is typically how they use tree maps. But I don't think we color them that often. So that's
Is this a customer facing interface, these things?
yeah. It's sort of like it's it's I think good enough for browsing and like attractive enough, but like we're not really sell data, not pretty displays. So. But it's the nice thing about it. It's I may need to copy it to my own. So now actually like now I can get this data, or I can actually create like API call to like pull this data. Yeah. So it's really like displays are there to like help find the data. But we don't do a lot like as far as visualizing our tree structure, especially not in the customer facing displays. But I think we want to we want to like build. I think it'd be useful to like build something like that for our own data. Right now we're just looking at like either tree structure or there are like various ways to browse the graph, but not it's you have to look at the data, and it's not pretty.
I'm curious. It's a question. Maybe it's ignorance. So when different countries export the same crop, right? Soybeans, for instance, do they export it at different prices, or does it actually fall to the same level after a while?
That I'm not. I'm not sure. I think it's a commodity.
Right. So over time it'll fall, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And they standardize it, but I think it's I think Brazilian soybeans not the same price as the U.S. soybean, but there's a relation basically. It's cost of transportation, the maybe quality. I don't know if quality goes into it, but it's the same. It's not like oil is oil everywhere. I think it's slightly different, but it's still connected.
Okay.
Plus, when the people buy it, like they're like market price, but I think like they make deals also. Like
Discounts.
China, when China buys like large amount.
Sujit, you have some experience with commodities?
No, not really. I mean, I just know that stock market is like super competitive and it's an ideal market. So, any arbitrage opportunities are actually very limited. It's what I'm saying. So,
you're wondering if that's true with agriculture too?
Yes, I was. So, if you had colored it differently according to price, this could be a very good arbitrage dashboard, right? If that condition existed.
Oh, I'll try it.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Yuri, who are some of your bigger customers?
We can't talk about customers,
Oh,
but but
types of customers.
yeah, hedge funds, um, input companies that basically provide data to, like, provide everything to the farmers. Food companies that basically process agricultural products. Um, and
And,
yeah,
and what do you think your most valuable data is?
it's difficult to say. So we just released. We've been pivoting from pure agricultural data to more climate data, because now, climate, like basically trying to estimate climate risks is becoming a big financial instrument, and nobody has like a stable, good stable data. So that's been so we recently released drought index, for example, so you can actually have more stable measure of drought. So that seems to be like really popular. But,
Interesting. Yeah.
and also we produce our own yield model, so people pull that also. Even though like nobody like, so usually people who trade commodities, they like building their own model. So we sort of, nobody buys our data because of the model, but everybody's interested.
Maybe it's a bench. You use it as a benchmark or a baseline.
Yeah, look, it's kind of shows how to use our data, and also like shows possible problems, or like where data is volatile, where can you use it, things like that.
Okay. And do you have any, Yuri? Why don't you update us on anything else? I know you got a bunch of different things going on over time.
Yeah, so like, I apologize. Like, I just posted what we discussed last time, links to what we discussed last time. So this information retrieval class that somebody's teaching right now, and then new papers from sentence transformers group. Actually, I can maybe share. Hold on just a second. Right there. So I haven't gone through them, but they're like sort of, that's their publications in order. So that was the original one. Then augmented BERT was a way to like, improve sentence similarity. Then they added multilingual. That's this paper. And I think this is where they also added. I think everybody loves those like visual, multimodal, visual slash language embeddings. So I think they actually have that. They show that like a picture of something is in embedding space close to the sentence about it. But I think that's a popular thing to do now. And then they actually released the benchmark on information retrieval. I think because they didn't have like a good benchmark before, so they created their own.
What is I know what zero shot classification is. What's zero shot information retrieval?
I think it's you're not training. That's my understanding. I didn't read the paper yet. and they
Zero-shot
say can be,
evaluation. It's
yeah.
zero-shot evaluation, whatever that means.
Yeah, I think I think it means no retraining, but
Yeah, and
but they say,
this is back to BM25 being the best, right?
yeah, yeah. So it's actually interesting. Like so somebody else in my group kind of looked at our mapping problem, and he basically said, let me use BM25, which I always kind of wanted to do as a baseline, but I really think we shouldn't be using kind of bag of words, because I think then meaning is lost in a lot of cases. But he showed like a decent result. It's not as good as let's say SBERT without with zero shot with like no retraining, but it's okay, okay performance. So and then yeah, then I just saw that they list they're starting to list projects that use the sentence transformers, and BERT topics is one of them.
This is
Top to vec. I don't know that one. What is that?
Which one?
I think,
Top to that topic model.
yeah, topic vectors. Right?
Yeah, it's yeah. I think
It's just like
this.
BERT topics.
Yeah.
It's another topic modeling
I
library?
think so, yeah.
Huh.
A BERT topic is just down there, the one you talked about, yeah.
So there are two links. No, is it the same one? No, here's the top to that. And topic modeling.
There you go. Okay.
I think that's yeah.
It's funny they call it top to vec when it's. Are they using Windows and are they doing?
No, those are two different links. So that one is top to vec, another is just using sentence. I think this might be like I've seen this I think I've seen this page before.
This is BERT topics.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have my subscription, so I can almost never read a Medium article or a Towards Data.
By the way,
I'm resisting it.
You can incognito. That's how I.
Yep, that's what I was gonna. I don't know. Can you see my?
Oh.
I can see.
You don't. Do you see my second?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just see a.
I don't know how to open. I don't know how to open private tab in the same. Like in Chrome.
Yeah, you have to close and open, the new one, or you can share the entire desktop.
Yeah.
But it's, okay.
Yeah, but. I don't know if it will share. Oh, okay. For some reason I can't share right window anymore.
There. Okay.
But yeah, all you do is copy.
You have a very nice monitor.
Sorry?
You have a very nice monitor. It's very white. Or maybe it's two. No, it's two of these. Okay.
It's two, yeah. Oh no, why didn't it still says two. I don't know, maybe it didn't. It works on Chrome, I know.
Yeah.
All right. So I actually have a question. Because I think we talked a little bit about search before. So we have a group that actually like trying to do search, and I'm trying to work with them to do vector search. But like, we're not there yet. But one thing that they started, so they have some implementation of search, so now everybody's trying to improve it. So what came up today is, so we actually have our search that was, so you can search multiple topics, and then we know what people are looking for, so we can actually manually sort of combine, increase some valuable data or decrease other data that we know people not looking for. But like in general, we actually have this graph ontology. So it looks like obvious kind of choice, obvious like suggestion that came up today was, well, can we use graph structure to help with search, right? Use some graph properties, maybe how many descendants a node has. So that's that should push it. Or what's the kind of a neighborhood of the is it like important node or not important node? Are there any standard techniques or like something to read on like using the knowledge graph itself in search? Is that like common or?
The ones we use are mostly heuristics that we kind of derive from having domain experts tell us, right? So, for example, we recently did something with procedures, right? So medical procedures. So a medical procedure can be used for multiple number of diseases. So if somebody enters a medical procedure name, which disease document do you choose to show him the procedure, right? And how you rank it. So we basically went with, find all the diseases and then use the rank of the edge connecting the procedure and the disease to rank the different results, right? So you have, say, I don't even know what a procedure. Okay, so some kind of surgical procedure, right? It can be used to do some, maybe a heart operation, maybe a liver operation. So you would rank them in the order in which the edges are marked, right? So, and the edges are marked based on the, how much it is used, and that is a medical. We have domain experts marking that basically.
So your edges are weighted.
Weighted.
Yeah, and so you have a procedure, and you have the diseases with weighted edges. So you use those weightings to help re-rank the results. Yeah, that's interesting.
But that's like a very, very domain kind of thing, right?
So basically I think that's how they were doing it, like, but not with graphs, but just by like there were different ideas. So right now people are basically domain expert basically said, like those are top main crops, so push them up. Or we know we have weather stations as regions, but people typically don't care about weather stations. They care about districts and actual geographic. So push those down. And as far as like automatically doing it, like freshness of data was interesting. Right? That's okay.
Well, I mean, obviously, this is you can expand and contract the focus topically by your graph, maybe. Or you can also show entities, or different types of nodes.
Yeah, some kind of faceting, right?
Yeah, it's old school. It's the old school, you know, query and then get the person doing the query to give you a little feedback somehow on what they're actually, how they want to narrow it down or what they're interested in.
Right. Yeah.
You can use the graph that way.
Yeah, get the facets from the graph, basically. All the neighbors give you the facets.
I mean, what really matters is, of course, the use cases, the main use cases, right? For, you know, the searcher, what they want.
Oh, I'm not following. How does that work? So
I don't know what your graph looks like at all, but I mean, you mean the narrower and broader part of it, or you mean what CG called faceting?
so faceting are the neighbors, or what would be faceting?
You could take a subset of neighbors, or you could even group your neighbors by edge type, right? So let's say you get a disease, and disease has multiple kinds of neighbors. You have symptoms, you have procedures, drugs, right? And you could basically look at all your neighbors and then group them by the relation type, and then show them as facets on the left, right? So under, say, so you have the disease results on the right pane, and on the left pane you say, okay, under symptoms you have, you know, symptom 1, 2, 3. So whenever you click on that, it becomes disease plus symptom, right? Similarly, you know, drugs, disease plus drug, that sort of thing. So kind of a refinement strategy, right? But you use, instead of trying to grab the facets from your data, the results, you're trying to grab the facets from predefined, you know, and in our case, manually curated data.
I mean, the hard thing is whether you know, so you might have procedures, you might, on the left side, right? You might have diseases, because maybe it's related diseases,
right.
You know, whatever the types of nodes you have in your knowledge graph, you just grab them from the top 10 results or 100 results, and you look and you find all the, or however you do it, you end up with a list of these. But the question is, do you use those to refine, to narrow it, or do you use those to sort of just tweak the meaning and the focus? That's where sort of the art, that's where the real art of making this work intuitively lies. But Yuri, does that make some sense how you could use them?
Yeah, actually, well, we didn't talk about how to get data from the graph, but that's exactly like what we discussed today. Is you know, do we like give them ability to filter something, or like do search and then try to filter on what we know about the data? But and we're starting to add facets that are like top, sort of like mini topics. So not top, but like a types of data. But we're like slowly adding them. Right now, the graph as is just a relationship, one relationship. Right now, it's a contain. But then now we're trying to now we're like marking it with different facets.
You know, I'm thinking also, you know, it's kind of interesting. You could match directly to, you know, on the search, right? Because you can put your graph into embedding, and so you could actually, you know, like we talked about before, right, with the walking or whatever, and you get the triple and you embed it. So you could actually, rather than using the results, I bet it would be interesting and better and more natural to actually, at the same time you're querying your search engine, you query your graph.
Yeah.
And you get graph results, and you might get a graph result that's like 100%, like a 1.0 hit. And then you could, so the non 1.0 hits, you're just gathering related stuff nearby, and you could group those and do things with those. And then, but the ones where you have the exact hit, you could do that more so graph, you know, finding the, you know, the neighbors and so forth. But doing that and searching with user use cases in mind, you could probably come up with some pretty interesting ways to refine or tweak. I mean, even better, really what you don't really, ideally you don't want like faceting and refinement. What you really want to do is the system to suggest, like, how about you refine your results by this, or broaden them by this, or maybe look at this information. Somehow you want to get some sort of real I don't know how you do that exactly. Maybe it's like a question and answer system, but
Yeah, we
I don't
had
know.
long ago in my previous company, we had something we called a BNR component. So every time, so essentially it's like broader, narrower relations, right? And those were query refinement suggestions. It's
Yeah,
called
yeah.
that. So it was quite interesting. Another one I just thought about, and we are playing with that, is using the page rank. So you pre-compute your page rank on your graph for each node, and then you use that as an additional signal for your document, right? How important the document is, along with your search scores that you have, right? So like a graph interpolated with the actual Lucene score. One other idea I've been playing at, and this is not search related, is and this has not flown for a long time, is to involve the community. So whenever you do tricks like these, right, when you take the graph and you try to meld it with the search, and you do things with it, right? You're trying to understand the query and react to that. Involve the community, right? So in my last company, I tried to push this idea, and we were very worried about the secret sauce leaking out, right? So, but I've been thinking about this, and it's not, the secret sauce is there, sure. I mean, but it's mostly the data behind the sauce, right? Which users cannot replicate, right? So, but they can, they can obviously replicate the ideas if they have similar data as you. Right? So maybe involve the user through a blog, through tips and tricks, right? And seek their feedback as well. How would they use it? What kind of patterns would they like to enjoy, right? So I'm going to try once more here in my current thing, where I'm the ideas guy. I'm going to try this here again to see if that works out. But yes, so that's an idea I've been trying to push.
You're mainly sort of thinking about what we were talking about, like how do you incorporate other information into the search, or how do you refine the search, that kind of thing, and how would a user do that naturally or want to
Yes.
do that?
Yeah. So what would a user enter, and what would they want from it? Right?
Yeah, it's interesting. When I was in library school, I did this thing. I did an experiment. This is an interesting way to do this, actually, called I think it's you think out loud. So I'd be sitting with you. You could do it by Zoom, I'm assuming. But I would give you first of all, we practice talking out loud about what you're thinking, right? So you just speak all of your thoughts. And then I'd have you do a task, a search task, or any kind of web task. And you talk out loud about the way you're feeling, the way you're thinking, all that kind of stuff. And that would be one way to tease out, the search. I'm searching for this, and this is why it is. And, well, that sucks. That's kind of interesting. That's good. Oh, I wish I could do this. I can't. It's a pain in the ass. So think out loud can give you that kind of open-ended kind of feedback that could, turn into something of value that you can incorporate. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Are there other techniques you think of for doing that?
Well, in this case, this would be more of a focus group kind of thing, where I pay the guy to, tell me his thoughts, right? Here I'm trying to get it for free, where, I have a bunch of users. I involve them in my development process, as it were, right? So I tell them that, okay, when you enter two drugs, right? I believe you're looking for drug-drug interaction. When you're entering two diseases, I believe this is what you're looking for, right? When you say, so disease and a procedure, disease and a drug, disease and a symptom, right? And this is what I do. Very, very high level. I'm not going to tell you exactly what I do in my graph, but this is what I look for. Maybe I go to my disease and then I look around and I see my, all the symptoms, and I get something, do something with that, right? So at a very high level, I describe what I do already. And then I ask them, like, what are your thoughts? How would you want us to, what kind of patterns would you like to see, right? And, what do you expect from the output, right? So that sort of thing is what I was trying to get at.
Well, what kind of person would that be?
What kind of?
Person. What would their role be?
Oh, this is my user.
Oh, yeah. Well, that gets to what I'm asking. Is that a doctor?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Oh, I see where you're getting at. Yes, a doctor, a nurse, or yeah, or a medical student. I would know who they are, or I could ask them who they are. They could choose from a list of, occupations, if you will. And
Do you ever partner with the universities? Because it sounds like almost a Stanford university research from an anthropology department or someone who does this kind of stuff with systems. And what they could do is do this with hundreds of people and really understand the patterns, the practitioner patterns. And the practitioners wouldn't be thinking about your system. That's more like a boundary person, right? Like an anthropology speaker, those people that can kind of translate back and forth. But I mean, I know you probably not going to get backing in time to do that, but that's what comes to my mind is that sort of, I don't know what you call that, but I know they get done they're not ethnographies, but they're sort of that level of understanding and detail of practitioners' patterns of interest and things they do in terms of searching. But anyway.
Yeah, we have a couple of doctors and staff who are doing very similar things, but I think of it as like, because they're just two people, they have their own biases, right? So they would not want to, or they would look at only a subset of things. But if I open it up to the community, I could get more ideas, and we could implement them. So that's
sounds like a good idea. It sounds interesting. Maybe fun.
But it goes up against this whole, are we leaking IP, right? So that's
well, that's just like open source.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, because you're misunderstanding your core value. That's your argument you're making, and that's probably true. And in fact, by improving that layer, right, of that search interface, what you're doing is increasing the value of your data.
Exactly.
Because your data is really only as valuable as how it can be used, and that's how it's being used.
Right.
So that's what open source is. The whole stack is bigger. It's getting bigger. So yeah, that's what you get for working for old school company. Old school, man.
Well, the previous one was a startup, and we were like so paranoid about our stuff getting leaked. So
it's the same. Got to judge really what the IP is. So.
But this is a good point that you brought out. Data being only as valuable as how it's used. And that's a very good perspective. I think I should.
I mean, it's a big deal, right? Because finding shit and searching when you need it in an intuitive way, it's like the data is annoying and useless without that. Right. Exactly. So, I mean, there's definitely some secret sauce there, but that's not really the core of Elsevier.
Right. Right, exactly. Well, that's not our, okay, it might be a strength, but that is not, if somebody replicates it, we still have stuff that they cannot replicate, right?
Yeah, you got your core, well, look, the core, the real heart and the soul of you guys is the content.
Right.
Right? Isn't that true?
Yeah, absolutely.
It is, and that's how it's known, and that's where, so that you always have to focus on your core as much as possible. Right? Yeah. And if you can use search and other capabilities to grow the interest in that core,
right? Yeah,
that might make sense. Yeah. I mean, you guys aren't known for you're not known for your user interfaces, right?
Yep, we are not.
And those days used to work. Like I think of LexisNexis too. There's a lot of internal bespoke innovation in that area, right? But the world's changed, really, because of could call it consumerization. Have you ever heard that term? It's kind of an old school term, but basically consumerization is that everyone got spoiled by it was pre-iPhone, but by everyone's experience with apps that really work well.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And computers that work and all that. So now it's hard to kind of maintain doing that stuff internally. because you just can't. You can't do it the way consumer
Right.
the big guys can do it. So
Yeah.
All right. Sujit, is there something you want to share or talk about?
So I'm basically with this team, embedded in this team, and I'm learning their procedures and processes and so forth. I've got access to some of their resources at this point. So, but mostly it's not that interesting. So what I actually did, got myself into actually. So there was a thing on Twitter where they were looking for volunteers who spoke Bengali and who were willing to participate in a distributed bird training event, right? So I speak Bengali, so I joined. It's a Discord server, and what they're doing is they're doing a decentralized training exercise, right? Where they have a script which runs on your notebook, Colab, or they're going with the free notebooks like with GPU. So Colab and Kaggle are the two things they've identified. So you run your thing, it keeps running till you get kicked out of their platform, or it dies due to inactivity. And what happens in the background is that you get put into a peer group, right? So let's say there are 50 simultaneous trainers. Each peer group would be like subsets of that, maybe say 10 people, right? So you get put into a peer group and you start with random weights in the beginning, right? And then as you connect to their peer group, you take the average of all their train weights, right? And start, go forward with that, right? And this process continues, and you keep, as you finish, you share your weights with the rest of your peer group, and after a while you dissociate from the peer group, right? And you join another peer group. You can also stop the process. Maybe your notebook crashed, or you close the tab, or you just stop being active, or you decided to close that thing, right? So in that case, your entire peer group will crash, right? And they will get reassigned to other groups where they will access the weights from them, right? So the whole process is like model averaging. There is, that's the decentralized issue, right? And over time, the loss will drop and so forth. The model will get trained in this manner, right? So each person trains a little subset, right, of the model, and then they share the weights, right? So that's what I've been doing, and I also got quite a bit of insight.
Question on that, but I'm missing some context here. What are the weights coming from? What are you training? Is it just training automatically in the background? Is it? I mean, I don't understand what it's doing.
Okay,
exactly.
so the task is basically pre-training an Albert model, right, with Bengali. So it's mostly sentence completion, right? So Albert depends more on sentence completion task than masked language model, right? So you have the pair of sentences, and you say, okay, does this sentence follow from this sentence, right? So they take these two sentences, stick them together, and that's a true thing, and they flip it, and then that's a false thing, right?
But where's the data? I don't know. Are you sitting down and doing a training yourself, or is it automatically Bengali language being collected from somewhere?
Okay, so the language. So there are three basic corpora. The first corpora is to train the sentence tokenizer, right? So that was scraped from Bengali newspaper sites, right? So data from that. The model itself is being trained on two corpora. One is the Bengali Wikipedia dump, and the other one is something called Oscar, which is like a huge multilingual corpus, includes Esperanto, by the way, and also Bengali. So they took the Bengali piece of Oscar and the Bengali Wikipedia, and they're using that to train Albert.
But what's the peer training part of it?
Okay, so they have this script which basically just runs the trainer, right? It accesses the data set from a central location I think it's in either in Google or in S3. I'm not sure which. I have to look at it. So it's sitting in a central location, and the script that you start is basically just a PyTorch training loop, right? And it keeps going until forever, right? Until you stop it. And within that, as you finish each iteration, it basically shares the weights it has updated, the model weights, with all its peers, right?
Okay. So I think I understand the basics. The basic is this is just a form of distributed computing to use resources,
yes.
because Google's not doing it, spending $100,000, $1 million to do it. So you're trying to pre-train a huge model through the old SETI model.
Exactly. It is actually called learning
okay.
at home.
So I wouldn't have to know Bengali to do it. It's just
no, you don't.
I'd be interested in it, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason they asked people whether to know the language, right, is basically to do the QA for the sentence tokenization, to make sure that the sentence was tokenizing at the right pace. So it wasn't that much to know, right? It's basically, so we found that so the period in Bengali is like, it's called matra. It's like a line, right? You stop, right? But just like English, sentences need not always end with a period. If it's a title, for instance, right, it doesn't have a period. So, or if it's a heading of some kind. So in those cases, you don't have it. But it's actually simpler than in English, because we don't have, abbreviations don't have that thing in there, right? So we actually follow the English there. So if you were to say, if you have an organization name, which is a long, 5 words or something, and you say, okay, you break it down, right, into, say, CESC or something. So you actually put periods in there. So it, we use periods for abbreviations, and this matra for sentence tokenization. So yeah, but the fun part is really the distributed thing, and the fact that we are basically parasites, right, on Colab and everywhere.
So is that just being done specifically for the Bengali language from a person who's interested in that, or is this a general platform that can be used like this?
It can be used for anything, for mainly any kind of distributed computing using public resources. You can also use your own GPU box, but you have to open a whole bunch of ports, which doesn't seem very nice. I think it's built on the SETI at home idea, where you open a few ports and let them come in and do their stuff. But here you are running the process on their behalf, right?
What's the name of it?
It's called HiveMind, and it's from Learning at Home. Hang on, I can send this to you.
Oh, okay. So I found some link from Hugging Face, but I guess it might be different.
It's actually, Hugging Face is part of it, actually. So
collaborative training experiment of the Albert model for Bengali. That's got to be the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So it's Hugging Face and Yandex are part of this whole thing.
Oh,
I put it in the Slack. I don't know if not here in the channel.
Yep,
sorry.
I see it in Slack.
Oh,
it's a Git repo. There it is.
Yeah. I think distribution technology came from Yandex.
Yes.
I saw it somewhere, but yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah, they're coming out with a paper end of this month, and the training will probably finish in another week.
And are they it's for, I see. Okay. Nice.
So that was the fun thing I did.
Seems like something that Jeremy would be interested in. He was always talking about the low resource languages. He went back to Australia. I haven't heard much of that.
He just announced basically they're gonna redo part 1. Same software. I think it's starting with May 25th. it's going to be same lectures, but like basically large study group, and then he's going to teach part two. You know how he always does, like part one is the introduction, and then part two is sort of advanced deep learning based on the same with the same software. And he hasn't done like he's done part one because they published the book a year ago, and he's done part one but not part two. So I think now he said he's going to do part one again just to like do like a refresher, and then they're going to teach part two.
Good. I'm glad he's sticking with it.
Yeah,
I'm not looking at further and further.
Yeah, I was actually surprised. I mean, I had thought of it as Bengali as a low resource language, but there has been quite a lot of progress. Maybe not, obviously not as much as English, but they have like two of these toolkits which they leverage for doing the sentence tokenization, and that can do NERs and part speech tagging and all sorts of cool shit, right? So it's actually quite nice.
That's good. It's a good path forward for a lot of languages. All right, guys. Anything else you want to share, CG? That's kind of fun.
Yeah, that was fun. The other stuff is boring. So yeah.
Yeah, but we like boring stuff normally. Oh, by the way, I'm in a weird, not exactly analog to your adventure in another group. So yeah, it turns out that I'm sort of doing the same thing, but in a teeny way. So the unsupervised automatic classification process that I developed, is being put into production now. And now I'm actually been given, access to the Git repo, and I've been on a call, so I know how they're implementing it all. And I'm going to go in there and write some tests for it. So I mean, not the same thing, but I won't be as distracted by it all as you're going to be stuck in that group. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because I don't know if this is normal or good or whatever, but we have a pipeline of bringing in inbound our data from software vendors that that are our customers, and bringing in their pages, and that's the pages on their site. Mm-hmm. And that pipeline, we're using Cloud Functions, which is Google's Lambdas.
Okay.
And so the whole pipeline is just Lambda does this, passes off to a queue, PubSub, the PubSub queue.
Right. Okay.
And then it hands it off to this other Lambda that does this. It's like, to me, it's kind of overly complicated, and I didn't think we needed to scale that much. But so basically, I had handed off the whole thing as a container with Flask, remember that whole thing. And I was like, it's all with DVC and everything. It's perfect. You guys will love it. But no, it does. Of course, when you're using functions, that you can't do any of that. It all has to be a freaking function. So anyway, they rewrote it. None of the real logic, but they rewrote it so they could call it as a Lambda function. And then the models can't keep in Git, so they put those on GCS, the word-to-vec model, because it's big. And then evidently, you have a limit on how much you can actually put into the Lambda, but once the Lambda is registered, once it's up and running, it could pull stuff in to memory.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
From Google Cloud Store. Because I've always wondered, with these, there's always the problem with state, they say, with functions, these cloud functions or serverless functions. But I guess there really isn't if you can communicate back and forth with Google Cloud Store, and you can bring in a huge model. So yeah. I mean, but it doesn't even for each one of these lambdas, you're loading a lot into memory for each one. Yeah. But evidently,
I know AWS lambdas
pretty well.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know AWS lambdas have limits on how much you can use, but how much data you can put in that lambda.
Yeah. So does Google, but evidently you can, once it's up and running, you can pull in the memory, whatever you need to pull into memory. So anyway, that's what I need to work on after this call. So it's writing those tests. So I'm not much of a test writer.
What are you using for test writing?
It's just PyTest.
PyTest, okay.
They
Unit
wrote
test.
one. They wrote one in there, and all it's going to be is this is the text, so like a line of text. It's like a page text, right? I'm using boilerplate to extract, but I'm just going to have a sentence that talks about machine learning. I'm going to run it locally on my existing implementation that they didn't rewrite. I'll get the JSON that comes
The
back,
output, right, and make sure.
and that's
yeah.
so that's all I have to do is see if
Okay.
it's, make sure it's the same on theirs, and then set up like maybe 10 of those queries, and then they'll be able to use it as tests. So
Yeah, I'm learning a new thing called robot framework. I haven't still understood it fully. So the team I am with, right, they use it for integration tests. So they claim it is better than writing unit tests because unit tests have bias, the programmer's bias. Right?
right.
So this
I
is
think
from the outside looking in, right? So
I heard something like that recently. It was pretty interesting. So how does it work?
I don't know yet. I just know the name. I have access to the GitHub, but I haven't been able to go any deeper in there.
I just heard something on testing like this, and I can't remember. There it is, robot framework. A generic open source automation framework? That doesn't sound right. It's too
That's
generic.
the one, I think it's
Oh.
robotframework.org. Hang on.
Yeah, and so they must be, it's not specifically for testing, it's just for automating things. You use it for automated testing, I think.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so they're using it for testing, integration testing for some reason. So I'll see what it is.
Robot framework has easy syntax utilizing human readable keywords. Capability can, yeah. It's a generic open source automation framework. It can be used for test automation and robotic process automation. It sounds like it's probably fairly intuitive to use and to read. So, okay.
I'll once I know how much, how we are using it, I'll share that. So that
Okay.
might be interesting at some point.
All right, guys. Anything else before we call it a week?
Not me. Yeah.
No.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Talk to you guys
Thank
next
you.
week. Take it easy.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
All right.